Last night in the teachings, Venerable Chödrön made the case that we need to understand the Four Noble Truths until it gets into our bones that suffering comes from our own mind. And so I thought that it's equally true that happiness comes from our own mind, so that's what I'd like to speak about today. We all want happiness. We don't want suffering. It's almost cliche anymore, but is that just at the superficial level, or do we really understand that in the deepest expression of how that operates in our lives? And also, do we appreciate how unskillful we are in bringing about a lasting state of happiness, something that's reliable, something that's replicable? So to demonstrate this, I think it's a good example to think about an average day. Okay, so probably most of us, at least those of us who live at the Abbey, probably think when the alarm goes off, I'm just going to hit the snooze alarm, 10 more minutes, and I'll be happy, or 15 more minutes. Or do you find that for yourself, that the youth that are here, do you find if you could just stay in bed a little bit longer, that you think that's going to bring you happiness, but is that the case? Or do you just get up a little groggier, and then you have to race to get done what has to get done? Okay, so what happens next? What's the first thing you do when you're out of bed? Okay, you've already peed. Now, what do you do next? Tea. Cup of tea, strong one. Okay, now notice how when you made your cup of tea this morning, you're trying to get it just right. Just the right strength, just the right amount of honey or sugar or whatever you put in it, just the right amount of milk or soy or rice milk, whatever it is. Look how many decisions we've made, and we've only been out of bed for what, 2 minutes? And how many decisions we've made about this is going to bring me happiness if I have it just the way I like it. Okay, so notice there's an assumption here that happiness exists external to ourselves. And then what's the next thing you do?
Either walk to the hall or set up water bowls, or walking to the hall, looking out over the expanse of the morning.
Okay, what about the others that are visiting the Abbey? What do you do next? Do you get in the shower? Not here, but at home. Brush your teeth. Okay, so even notice how you're putting the toothpaste on your toothbrush. You're trying to get just enough, not too much, so that it spills all over your mouth and gets all over the sink. Okay, eventually you get into the shower, right? And don't you stand there for a few minutes trying to get the water just right, the temperature just right, as if happiness can come right out of the shower. And then you probably go and get dressed, and our decisions about getting dressed are very easy, but what about you? How do you decide what to wear each morning? Maybe it's just whatever's clean, but aren't there decisions like, I'm going to wear the blue shirt because it really brings out the color of my eyes, or I'm going to wear the comfortable pants today because I ate too much yesterday, or you know how we're making constantly making thousands of decisions about what's going to bring me the most happiness today. And then you probably go and have some breakfast. So just think back to what your decision-making routine was like this morning when you were coming through the line. What's going to bring me the most happiness? Am I going to have the muesli, or am I going to have the cooked cereal? Muesli, okay. And oh, okay. And just the way you like it, right? Again, countless decisions, thinking there's an underlying assumption about all of these decisions that we've made. And that's that happiness exists external to ourselves. So, given that happiness is so important to us, we need to really check up on that assumption that happiness exists external to ourselves. Because we're doing this 24/7. If you check, even in your dreams, you're looking for happiness, aren't you? All right. So, does happiness exist in external things as it appears to? External things are conditions for happiness, no doubt about it. But there are some really interesting consequences in thinking this way. If happiness existed externally in those things, in those people, in those situations, in those objects, the way it appeared, then first of all, the more we had of those things, the happier we'd be. So think about that cup of tea. 1 cup of tea makes you happy. 2 cups of tea makes you have to go to the bathroom. 3 cups of tea and you're starting to shake a little bit, right? It becomes a lot more obvious with coffee. But same thing is true. Okay, so the more we had of that thing, the happier we'd be. So we need to check that out. Is that true with all these things that we're making a decision about having? That's one consequence. Also, if happiness exists in those external things or people the way they appeared, then we would always be happy when we were in contact with those objects. But is that true? Aren't there days where you have a cup of tea or you have granola or muesli and you're just not very happy, right? So what happened to the happiness that existed externally in that thing, in that food or in that person? The other consequences of assuming that happiness exists externally is that everyone should have the same kind of happiness at the same time. But that's not the case. Some people don't like tea. Some people don't like muesli. Some people don't like the people we like. Some people don't like the music we like. Could you imagine? So we need to go further in our investigation to see, well, what's the real situation here? If we check, happiness and suffering are experiences. They come and they go. They're impermanent. And what we know from science is that all impermanent things have causes. They have substantial causes, they have conditions. And not just any old cause will do, it has to be a compatible cause, something of a similar type. So we need to thoroughly investigate the causes and conditions to get the happiness that we want. Now, if we don't want happiness, we don't have to do this exercise. Or if we want happiness, but we're not willing to work for it, then we don't need to do this exercise either. It would be futile. But if we truly want to bring more happiness into our lives, then this is a very worthwhile question to explore. For instance, if we had a business, and we would certainly check at the end of the week or the end of the month to see, am I making a profit? If we went year after year not making a profit, would we keep doing the same thing? And yet that's what we're doing when we're trying to find happiness, isn't it? So there are external causes for happiness. Those are some of the things that we've just been talking about. You know, we're seeking nice sights, nice sounds, nice smells, nice taste, nice tactile objects. But there are also, and these can bring pleasure, no doubt about it. They're a condition for experiencing pleasure, happiness, those sorts of things. But have you noticed they're unstable? They're constantly changing, they're unreliable, they come and they go. So what about, maybe there's another type of cause, like internal causes. Actually, the Buddha Dharma is all about developing internal causes for happiness. In a nutshell, positive states of mind lead to positive experiences. Negative states of mind lead to negative experiences. And the interesting thing about the mind is that these positive states of mind, like loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, these states of mind can be developed to the degree that we never lose them. Imagine, now there's the recipe for a reliable, stable, lasting kind of happiness. We've probably all had the experience in our lives where all the external conditions were in place, but if your mind was not so good, it didn't matter, did it? I can remember a couple of vacations I ruined because the external conditions were perfect, but my mind wasn't in a good place. And we've probably had the opposite experience too, which is that maybe the external conditions have not been so good, or maybe even challenging. But if our mind was in a good place, then it was okay, we could deal with it. So that's a clue. That tells us that our mental state is, rather than the physical external or physical environment, it's our mental state. That's the most important thing. So all this to say, happiness comes from our mind. The Buddha spelled this out very clearly and gave us a recipe for developing stronger and stronger states of positive states that can lead to lasting happiness. So I just thought this might be you've got another day or two here. This is a really important thing to keep in mind so that when you find yourself out in the world trying to make all these decisions, especially when you're in front of a deli counter and there's lots of desserts, to really stop and think, wait a minute, this is only a condition for my happiness. The real cause, the underlying substantial cause for my happiness is my own state of mind. So, maybe I need to work on that a little harder. Okay.